Reading practice in B2 English level.
Good morning, everyone. Or maybe it's not that good yet. Maybe you're watching this with one eye open, your hair is a mess, and you've already hit the snooze button 3 times. That's okay. I've been there. Actually, I'm there most mornings, even though I tell myself every night, tomorrow I'll wake up at 6 a.m. and be productive. And then 6 a.m. comes and I think, you know what? 6:15 is basically the same thing. So why is it so difficult? It seems simple, right? You set an alarm, the alarm goes off, you get up. But our bodies don't always agree with that plan. There's actually science behind this. Our bodies have something called a circadian rhythm. It's like an internal clock that tells us when to feel sleepy and when to feel awake. For most people, this clock is set to feel tired at around 10 or 11 p.m. and to naturally wake up somewhere between 7 and 8 a.m. So when we try to wake up at 5 or 6 a.m., we're basically fighting our own biology. No wonder it feels like a battle. You've probably heard the terms night owl and early bird, right? Early birds naturally wake up early and feel energetic in the morning. Night owls feel most alive late at night. And here's something interesting. Scientists say that whether you're an early bird or a night owl is partly genetic. Yes, it's in your DNA. So the next time someone judges you for sleeping late, you can look them straight in the eye and say, "Excuse me, I was just following my genes." There's another reason we struggle with mornings, and it's very modern: screens. Phones, tablets, laptops, they all produce something called blue light, and this light tricks your brain into thinking it's still daytime. So when you're scrolling through social media at midnight, your brain is basically saying, "Oh, it's still noon, no need to sleep yet." And then the alarm goes off at 7 a.m. and your brain is furious. It feels completely betrayed. You told me it was noon 6 hours ago, and now you want me to wake up? Here are the ones that really helped me. First, move your alarm to the other side of the room. When the alarm goes off and you have to physically get up to turn it off, it's much harder to go back to sleep. Second, give yourself something to look forward to in the morning. For me, it's a really good cup of coffee and my favorite playlist. When I think about that first sip of hot coffee, suddenly 6:30 doesn't sound so terrible. Third, be consistent, even on weekends. Sleeping in until noon on Saturday and Sunday basically gives you social jet lag. Your body clock gets confused and Monday morning becomes an absolute nightmare. Here's what I really want you to remember. Waking up early isn't for everyone, and that's perfectly fine. Productivity doesn't have a schedule. Some of the most creative and successful people in the world do their best work at midnight. The key is to find your rhythm, the time of day when you feel most focused, most energetic, and most like yourself. Whether that's 5 a.m. or 11 p.m., own it. Build your routine around it. Stop comparing yourself to those Instagram accounts that post things like, "I ran 10 kilometers, meditated for an hour, and wrote 3 chapters of my book all before 6 a.m." They exist to make the rest of us feel terrible. The most important thing, wake up with intention, whatever time that is, because a good day doesn't start when you open your eyes. It starts when you decide to make it a good one. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a cup of coffee calling my name. Good morning, everyone. You've got this.
Let me ask you a question. When was the last time you ate something and thought, "Wow, that was really good for me," and actually meant it? Not just told yourself that because you added 1 slice of tomato to your burger. We all know we should eat healthy. It's not exactly a secret, but knowing and doing are 2 very different things. So today, I don't want to give you a long list of rules. I just want to share a few simple ideas that actually make a difference. Ideas that are easy to understand and, more importantly, easy to start. Here's something that surprises a lot of people. Eating healthy is not about eating perfectly. It's not about cutting out every piece of chocolate, avoiding carbs forever, or surviving on salads and sadness. Healthy eating is about balance, getting the right mix of nutrients your body needs to function well. Think of your body like a car. If you put bad fuel in a car, it runs poorly. If you don't put any fuel in, it stops completely. Food is your fuel. The question is just, what kind of fuel? Nutrition experts generally agree on a few key things. First, eat more vegetables and fruits. I know, everyone says this and everyone ignores it. But here's the thing. Vegetables and fruits are packed with vitamins, minerals, and something called fiber, which helps your digestive system work properly and keeps you feeling full longer. The goal is to fill about half your plate with these at every meal. If that sounds like too much, start small. Add one extra vegetable to dinner tonight. That's it. Second, choose whole grains over refined ones. What does that mean in practice? It means brown rice instead of white rice, whole wheat bread instead of white bread, oats instead of sugary cereal. Whole grains digest more slowly, which means your energy stays stable throughout the day. No sudden crash at 3 p.m. where you feel like you need to take a nap under your desk. Third, get enough protein. Protein is essential for building and repairing muscles, and it also keeps you feeling satisfied after meals. Good sources include eggs, fish, chicken, beans, lentils, tofu, and nuts. You don't need to eat a huge steak every day. In fact, eating less red meat and more plant-based protein is something most health experts now recommend. Fourth, healthy fats are your friend. For a long time, people were afraid of fat, but not all fat is the same. The kind found in avocados, olive oil, nuts, and fatty fish like salmon is actually very good for your heart and brain. These are the fats you want on your plate. Now let's talk about what to reduce. Not eliminate, just reduce. Added sugar is probably the biggest issue in modern diets. It's hiding everywhere. In sauces, in bread, in yogurt, in fruit juices, in things that don't even taste sweet. Too much added sugar is linked to weight gain, energy crashes, and a higher risk of type 2 diabetes. The simplest way to cut back? Drink water instead of soda or juice. That one change alone can make a significant difference. Ultra-processed foods, things like instant noodles, packaged snacks, fast food, and frozen meals are designed to taste amazing, but they're often high in salt, sugar, and unhealthy fats while being low in actual nutrition. They're not evil, and eating them occasionally is totally fine, but if they make up most of your diet, your body will notice. Here's one approach that I find really helpful. It's called the 80-20 rule. The idea is simple. Eat nutritious, balanced meals about 80% of the time and give yourself freedom for the other 20%. That means you can enjoy your favorite comfort food, have dessert, grab fast food with friends without guilt. Because healthy eating that makes you miserable isn't sustainable. The best diet is one you can actually stick to. You don't need to become a nutrition expert. You don't need to count every calorie or follow a complicated meal plan. Start with the basics: more vegetables, more whole foods, less sugar, less processed stuff, and drink more water. Small, consistent changes beat perfect eating that lasts 3 days and then falls apart. Your body doesn't need perfection, it just needs a little more care. And trust me, when you start eating better, you'll feel the difference. More energy, better sleep, clearer thinking. It's not magic, it's just fuel.
Social media, the greatest invention of our time. The place where everyone is an expert, every photo is perfect, and every piece of news you read is completely made up. Wonderful. So let's talk about misinformation, the art of spreading things that are false but sound just believable enough that your uncle forwards it to the entire family group chat at 11 p.m. You know the kind. Scientists say drinking lemon water cures cancer. The government is putting microchips in vaccines. This celebrity just died. The celebrity, by the way, is absolutely fine and probably confused about why they're trending. Jokes aside, because this is actually quite serious, the scale of online misinformation is genuinely alarming. A landmark study from MIT found that false news spreads 6 times faster on Twitter than true news. 6 times. And the reason? Fake stories are more novel, more emotionally charged, and more surprising than real ones. Our brains are basically wired to pay attention to things that shock us. During the COVID-19 pandemic, the World Health Organization coined the term infodemic, an epidemic of misinformation alongside the actual epidemic. False claims about treatments, fake cures, and conspiracy theories spread so rapidly that health officials had to spend enormous resources just correcting wrong information. People died because of misinformation. That is not an exaggeration. Most people think they'd never fall for fake news. That's for other people, we tell ourselves, very confidently, while sharing something we didn't read past the headline. Research consistently shows that smart, educated people are just as vulnerable to misinformation as anyone else, sometimes more so because they're more confident in their own judgment. The way platforms are designed makes the problem worse. Social media algorithms are optimized for engagement, meaning they show you content that gets reactions. And what gets the most reactions? Outrage, fear. Content that makes you angry or scared gets more clicks, more shares, more comments than calm, nuanced, factual reporting. So the algorithm happily amplifies it. There's also the phenomenon of echo chambers, where you only see content from people who think like you. We think we're seeing the internet. Actually, we're each seeing a carefully personalized bubble. A fake story typically starts with a small, obscure website that posts something sensational and completely unverified. The headline is designed to provoke emotion, anger, fear, or excitement. Someone sees it, their brain registers the emotional trigger, and they share it, often without reading beyond the title. Within hours, it's been shared thousands of times. Eventually, someone makes a video about it, which gets millions of views. By the time fact-checkers have written their corrections, the original false story has reached 20 times more people. Corrections, unfortunately, are boring. Corrections don't go viral. Right, so what do we do? Because throwing our phones into the ocean, while tempting, is probably not realistic. First, develop the habit of pausing before sharing. Just 1 second of hesitation. Ask yourself, where did this come from? Have I read more than the headline? Is this from a source I recognize and trust? That 1 second of reflection can break the automatic sharing reflex. Second, check before you forward. Websites like Snopes, factcheck.org, and PolitiFact exist for exactly this purpose. They're free, fast, and will save you from the embarrassment of sharing something that's been false since 2009. Third, and this is the uncomfortable one, be willing to change your mind when you get new information. Being corrected is how we learn. Being stubbornly wrong is how misinformation survives. Media literacy is becoming as essential as reading itself. The ability to evaluate sources, recognize emotional manipulation, and distinguish between sources and fact, these are survival skills in the modern information environment. The antidote to misinformation isn't censorship. That creates its own serious problems. The antidote is critical thinking, curiosity, and the intellectual humility to say, wait, let me check that before I assume it's true. Because the world is complicated enough as it is, we really don't need to make it more confusing with stories we made up.
I need you to think about the last time you bought a piece of clothing. Maybe it was a t-shirt for $5, a dress for $15, a pair of jeans on sale. You bought it, you wore it once or twice, and then it sat at the back of your closet. Or worse, ended up in a landfill. And you didn't think twice about it because that's just how things work now. But I want to ask you, how did a t-shirt become so cheap that it costs less than your morning coffee? And what did that price actually cost? Fast fashion is the business model of producing large quantities of trendy, cheap clothing at incredible speed. Brands like Zara, H&M, and Shein release new collections not twice a year, but every single week. Shein, at its peak, was reportedly adding up to 10,000 new items to its website per day. How is this possible? By cutting costs at every stage. Cheap synthetic materials, extremely low wages for garment workers, minimal quality control, and zero concern for environmental impact. The price you pay at the register is artificially low because someone else, somewhere else, is paying the real cost. The global fashion industry employs an estimated 75 million garment workers. The majority are women in countries like Bangladesh, Cambodia, Pakistan, and Ethiopia. Their average wage is often below the living wage, meaning they work full-time and still cannot afford basic necessities. In 2013, the Rana Plaza building in Bangladesh collapsed, killing 1,134 garment workers. Before the collapse, cracks had been visible in the walls. Workers reported the cracks to their managers and were told to continue working anyway. The building was producing clothes for major Western brands. This is not an accident of history. This is what happens when the pressure to produce more, faster, and cheaper is placed entirely on the shoulders of the most vulnerable workers in the world. The global fashion industry is responsible for approximately 10% of global carbon emissions, more than international aviation and maritime shipping combined. The production of a single pair of jeans requires around 7,500 liters of water, roughly what one person drinks over 7 years. About 85% of textiles end up in landfills or are incinerated every year. Synthetic fabrics like polyester can take up to 200 years to decompose. Meanwhile, microplastics from our washing machines enter the water supply and are found in everything: the ocean, the air, and even human blood. Fast fashion is deliberately designed to be addictive. Constant new arrivals create FOMO, the fear of missing out. Low prices reduce the psychological barrier to buying. The sheer volume of choices creates what researchers call retail therapy, shopping as a form of emotional comfort. We've been sold the idea that buying is empowerment, but there's a difference between choosing carefully and consuming endlessly. I'm not here to make you feel guilty for every purchase you've ever made. What I want is for us to make more conscious choices. Buy less, buy better. One well-made item that lasts 5 years is more sustainable than 5 cheap items that fall apart in 3 months. Support brands that are transparent about their supply chain. Explore secondhand. Thrift stores, clothing swaps, vintage markets, these are not just affordable, they're genuinely stylish. Rewear and repair. The most sustainable garment is the one you already own. The fashion industry will not change on its own. Change requires pressure from consumers, from regulators, from all of us. The clothes on your back are a political statement whether you realize it or not. Let's make sure that statement says, we know the cost, and we're choosing differently. Because fashion should make people feel good, not just the people wearing it, but the people who made it too.